Hey everybody, welcome to another video of learning Japanese. Today we're going to talk about a question that we received and a potentially very interesting topic. And that is going to be the question of, are there really no such thing as curse words or swear words in the Japanese language? Just as a disclaimer here, I'm going to be spewing a decent amount of profanity in this video henceforth for the sake of examples, not because I'm a mean person or a bad person or anything. So if you watch a decent amount of Japanese media such as anime or movies or live action dramas or whatever, you might notice that a lot of the times the subtitles will translate lines to include English profanity such as the words fuck or shit, etc. Then you might in turn wonder if those are really the Japanese equivalent of those words being used in the original Japanese dialogue, because you know, some of these shows or anime are targeted towards kids and they're being aired in the middle of the day. Would they really be having words such as fuck or shit, or the Japanese equivalent of those at least, in those shows? So this here is basically going to be the context for our discussion, and the short answer is that no, they wouldn't have those words if they express the same degree of taboo-ness as the English profanity words fuck, shit, etc. do in the English language / societal norm or whatever. But yes, they have the equivalent of those words in the sense that they kind of convey the same emotion of being really harsh or rude. So to explain that another way, probably the simplest way to distinguish between English profanity and Japanese profanity is that first, if we're talking about the English language, English curse words kind of have this double function of being a way to make things sound harsher than they usually are and to be taboo. Alternatively, you can kind of substitute being harsh with being cool, because sometimes people will just cuss to make their words sound cooler. But in both cases, that harshness / rudeness and that coolness are both still going to directly derive from the fact that the words they are using are taboo. It's cool because you can't say it, or it's really harsh of you to say that because those words shouldn't be said at all. Calling somebody a fucking idiot as opposed to a total idiot, those two things mean the same exact thing pretty much, but the first one, of course, sounds cooler or harsher. Japanese curse words, for the most part, do not have this double function. It has taboo words, but you'll pretty much never hear somebody say that, even if they're adults in public, unless they want to publicly shame themselves or something, and those will be words that are kind of like racial discriminatory terms, or perhaps the most infamous example is the Japanese word for vagina. Those will just be taboo words. Using them won't make you sound cooler or harsher. Like in English, you might call someone a vagina head because it sounds funny or it's cooler. But Japanese taboo words won't work that way. They'll be more in line with the really severe English curse words, such as, again, racial discriminatory terms or something really severe. Like the N-word or something. Then when we look at it the other way around, it pretty much works the same way. The Japanese language also has ways to make things sound harsher, but those won't be taboo words. In fact, most of the times, it won't even be the words as opposed to the grammar that makes it sound harsher or more rude. If this isn't the first video that you're watching from our channel and you aren't a complete beginner at the Japanese language, you'll know that the Japanese language has a pretty extensive / rigid system to enforcing that the speech that you're saying remains polite or formal or casual, etc. And so for better or for worse, simply using not polite speech to someone can already be considered insulting enough in the Japanese language. And so this kind of inherent cultural and linguistical difference between the Japanese language and the English language is going to, of course, in turn influence how profanity is used, cursing or swearing is used. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through a list of a few quote-unquote swear words in Japanese, and we're going to exhibit basically how these words are actually pretty much perfectly normal words that you could use in formal senses, formal conversations, but once you grammatize them in a certain way, they become pretty much very insulting or frowned upon. So our first word is going to be the word kuso, which is going to probably most commonly translate to shit when you hear it in a show or it's subtitled or whatever. But the English word shit, of course, is considered profanity because it's kind of a taboo word. You shouldn't be saying that if you're a kid or you're in school or something like that. So just as easily, this could translate to just simply poop, which has a much more soft connotation, of course. So our point being here is that the Japanese word kuso, which would mean shit literally or just mean poop literally, it can be considered cussing in Japanese, but it can also be considered perfectly normal in Japanese depending on the other aspects of your speech or the line that you're using it with. So a common usage of this word, of course, that you'll see in TV is just simply saying it by itself, exclaiming it, basically kuso. And of course that'll most naturally translate to shit. Another insult that involves the word kuso is going to be kuso kurae. And this is going to translate to something like eat shit. In the native Japanese though, the only thing that's really making this into profanity or cussing or swearing is actually the verb, more specifically the verb conjugation. So we know kuso means poop or shit, then that means kurai is going to mean eat. The original form of this word slash verb is going to be kura, which means to eat. It is going to be conjugated into the imperative form, and so then it'll turn into kurai, and this is actually the only thing that's really turning this into vulgar language, because it turns into a command form or an order, and at that point you're ordering someone to eat shit, and that's how we construe it to be rude or impolite or insulting. So in that example, it's pretty much 100% the verb usage that is turning this into an insult and not so much the word shit by itself. And so to further counteract the idea of the word kuso being the profanity, here are two words that actually have the word kuso in them that are perfectly normal and they're not profanity at all. The first one is going to be kuso mushi, which is going to mean dung beetle. And so in English, of course, dung beetle is not profanity at all. The word dung means shit, but it's not profane. And the same idea applies to the Japanese equivalent kuso mushi. Even though kuso is commonly translated to shit, it doesn't have that taboo quality inherent in the word. So kuso mushi is not going to be profanity. We're not going to replace kuso with another word that means shit that is considered less offensive, because kuso isn't offensive in and of itself at all. So kuso mushi just normally translates to dung beetle without being offensive or anything at all. Another perfectly normal word that has the word kuso in it is going to be hana kuso, which just translates to booger. The literal translation is going to be basically nose excrement or something, and that'll just naturally turn into booger. And we can probably tell that's not going to be offensive in the least, even though it has the word kuso in it, and you might think that kuso will translate to shit literally. But no, it's perfectly normal, because again, it's not so much the words themselves that are taboo that turn them into profanity, it's just how we conjugate them or use grammar or other words or other aspects of words to turn it into this strong emotion where we're expressing an insult or being impolite. So this example, specifically the kuso kurai example, was showing how our statement turned rude because we used a particular verb form to make an order or to command someone to do something, which would just be rude, plain out rude. In our next example now, we'll show how just being casual can be insulting. And so for our next example of swearing, another term that's commonly used in TV and anime and whatnot, fuzakeru nayo. This statement is probably going to be translated to something along the lines of cut the shit or quit fucking around. In actuality, the literal translation is going to be something more along the lines of stop joking around, stop fooling around. It derives from the verb fuzakeru. That's the original kind of form, the dictionary form of it, which is going to translate to joke around, to fool around. What we're doing here to turn it into an insult is using the kind of verb conjugation of telling someone not to do something. So grammatically speaking, the way that we do that is just adding the na right after the dictionary form of the verb. So fuzakeru is the original word. We just add na right after that to turn into do not fuzakeru, do not fool around, do not mess around. Then what we also do is add this kind of final sentence ending particle yo to kind of add emotion or strengthen your emotion in the statement. So it turns into this kind of aggressive, hey, stop fooling around. When we translate this into English and we really want to convey that emotionality, that anger, we just kind of naturally turn to our profanity, the English profanity, so we turn that instead of stop fooling around to quit fucking around or cut the shit. If we were to go about the polite way of doing this while still maintaining the meaning of telling someone not to do something, we could say fuzekanaide kudasai, and this would translate to please stop fooling around or please stop messing around. And this is a perfectly normal statement. It won't be considered profanity or anything. And again, it'll be perfectly normal. In English, it wouldn't work that way, because if we said quit fucking around, even if we did turn that into a polite statement, would you please stop fucking around? That would still be profanity, because the word fuck is inherently considered taboo. But the Japanese word fuzakeru is not. Let's do another quick example of the same kind of concept using an adjective instead, which will use the word urasai, which is commonly translated to mean shut up. In actuality, this word is literally the most commonly used adjective to mean loud or noisy. So urusai means literally noisy or loud. The implication is, of course, you are noisy or loud. English translations will turn this into shut up because in the Japanese language, it is already considered insulting enough to straightforwardly point out that someone is being noisy or loud. Using the same concept as the previous example, if we turn this into the kind of casual form, the more impolite form of urusai, which would be uruse, this would even further kind of drive this idea of you're being really impolite to the person you're calling loud or noisy. So in the English translation, we're more likely to even translate that as the swearing of shut up. In our last example now, we're going to kind of do an exception to the rule of the double function of being taboo and insulting, and this is going to be the word teme, which is going to translate to literally you. So of course we'll admit that in English sometimes calling someone you is pretty rude and insulting, but in Japanese this is basically multiplicatively so because there are so many words to say you, more than 10, dozens of them. Meanwhile in English we only have one, and each one has a different kind of implication behind them. And in this certain one, teme, this one is going to imply that the person you're calling you is so below you basically that they're basically bottom-feeding scum. So yeah, this is one of those examples of a Japanese kind of swear word that is both taboo and insulting. It is arguably the top offensive term that you can use for someone in real-life conversation in Japanese. And so yeah, I just want to include that in here to say that there are in fact some Japanese terms that are kind of in the same line as English terms in that they're taboo and insulting, but they're very scarce and they're the minority of profanity. And the topic of profanity that we're covering in this video at least is kind of the English usage of profanity in the sense that you can use them to sound cooler or sound more insulting, such as the words fuck or shit, and not so much flat out offensive profanity such as racial discriminatory terms and the like. And so okay, that's actually gonna close it for this video. This topic, our conclusion is that how are English and Japanese profanity different? English has the double function of being both insulting slash cool and taboo. Japanese is just those are kind of two separate realms. They have taboo words and they also have ways to make things more insulting. That's more in line with the grammar, the other aspects of your line, and not so much individual words being taboo. And so this kind of means that English is more colorful and imaginative in its swearing. Interestingly enough, from my personal experience, I've noticed that a couple of other East Asian languages, if not most of them, kind of follow the system of Japanese language in that cussing or swearing or insulting profanity is more in line with the grammar, not so much as individual words, which is why you might sometimes hear foreign East Asian speakers kind of talking in their native language, then occasionally they'll stick in an English profanity word in there alongside their East Asian native language. I've heard my family members do it a couple of times. If I'm remembering correctly, I've seen it a couple of times in Chinese movies as well. And yeah, it's just kind of cool because it's kind of like they're using a super profanity hybrid language in that they're using the offensive grammar of their native language and then the offensive insulting words of the English language. So it's like they're super profanity people. So that is going to be the note that we end this video on, apparently how to become a super profanity user by learning 2 languages. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed your time doing so. If you'd like to express that, you can like the video, leave a comment below, or subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to support more of these video lessons or support more of these video lessons being created more often, or support more types of videos, please do consider checking out our Patreon page and consider becoming a patron there. Also included on the screen right now are of course a bunch of links on where to find and follow us elsewhere online, including our official website. And lastly, check out our Discord server. We've got a community of hundreds of people learning Japanese just there. So if you're looking for somebody to voice chat with just to practice speaking Japanese, or you have a quick question that needs a quick answer, or if you just want to talk about anime or music or manga or other Japanese things, learn Japanese.becauseofdreams.com/Discord. And with that, see you next time.